Welcome to the Open Trail Podcast. My name is Max Dugan. I'm the host, and I'm a craft brewer here in Manchester, Connecticut. For the last 3 years, we've been developing the Open Trail Initiative to help support local conservation efforts. This podcast is just an extension of that work, and we talk with a number of people in and around Southern New England who are in the conservation and outdoor arena. Today, I'm sitting down with Susan Barlow and Dermot Jones of my hometown's land trust, Manchester Land Conservation Trust. And we're going to go over what a land trust is, how it operates, and what purpose it serves. And before we even get to that, I just want to say thank you to our sponsors. Urban Lodge Brewing, thank you. I've been a part of Urban Lodge now for about 5 years. We've worked hard to create a community gathering place for the town and both in Manchester and now in Hartford. And I appreciate their support on this project and giving us this platform for this work. And I would like to thank the crew that's here today, Jason, Chris, and Lucas, and especially Jeff, who's been wrangling me. They are the awesome production crew of Quas Media, a digital marketing firm just down the road in Manchester, Connecticut, who creates some absolutely amazing award-winning work. I appreciate their help on this. So let's dive right into it. First of all, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you making the time to do this. So what is your position? You can, Dermot, I guess, go first. What is your position with the trust, and how did you get involved?
Presently, I'm the president. I've been the president for about 3 years, taking over from a president that was like 20 years president. As far as being involved in environment and conservation, I think it goes back when I was a kid, going around Hockanum River, running around different areas. I wasn't behind a computer like the kids today. But then I became on the Inland Wetlands Conservation Commission in South Windsor, so I got active there.
Yep.
My job even was an environmental consultant for the state Department of Public Health.
Yeah, you're involved in is it drinking water or is it wastewater?
Both. It was drinking water, wastewater, and solid waste testing. Okay. And I went around and certified labs to do that testing.
So you very much have this sort of science background of from the environmental science standpoint.
Correct, a chemistry background.
Yeah.
So from there, I went on to this position, not this position here at the president, but going to Manchester Land Trust. Because of our homeowners association, we had a parcel of land that was open space for the association. It was about 3 acres, and it happened to abut a property that Manchester Land Trust owned. So we approached them, and thank God, or fortunately for us, they decided to take it from us because it was a swampy area. We were paying taxes and insurance on it, so they took it over. And that was really nice because it's a nice property for turtles and other amphibians. It's really good. And it's, like I said, abutting another property. So they took it.
Which the trust is always interested in trying to take in another piece and creating contiguous sections and tracts of land.
Our trust is that's the whole primary purpose. Acquire land, preserve it, and maintain the land.
Yeah.
And we leave it as open space for public use. So when we traded that land over, the trust told me about some need they had. They needed a treasurer. So I volunteered for that, did it for 3 years. And then I became a vice president. And now, like I said, president.
So you've worn all the hats here.
I try.
Susan, how did you get involved with the trust, and what do you currently do for them?
Like Dermot, I love the outside. Running around and trails, and from the time we were little kids, and always wanted to learn more botany and the songs of birds, etc. So in Connecticut, we have Connecticut Trails Day, at the beginning of June, and I began to meet people who were leading walks. Ed Richardson, and there'd be a botanist, there'd be a geologist, and you just learn so much more than you would in a book because you're out there and you're hearing the bird song, and somebody will say, "Oh, that's the Veery or whatever. And that's how I got involved. I wanted to become someone who could invite children and families to have these same experiences that we had. And we frequently have kids come on walks who aren't used to the outdoors. I had one time, third grade. I was doing a third grade walk for a school group, and the kids were holding back, and are there bears? And they'd watched horror movies where terrible things happen in the woods. And I said, it's not like that.
Which I've recently discussed with other people who aren't children by any means, but those fears continue on into adulthood, and it can be very overwhelming for people to approach the natural world in a number of different capacities. What is your role now? I mean, are you a volunteer, and what work do you do?
Well, I kind of am the program manager. Not that there's a title, but I get the hikes going. We have usually 12 or 14 walks a year. They're free. We advertise them in the Journal Inquirer and social media, trying to get families to come out. I think if you start with the families, then the kids get a sense of it's okay to be out in the woods. I'm the webmaster. I do. Yeah,
I'll point out too that, and I'll stick up for you here. If you want something done at the Land Trust, you're gonna reach out to Susan. She's the one who's gonna get back to you.
Without a doubt.
All right, let's go from the very top. What is, and you could talk. I kind of want to just say this first before we even get into it. If someone's listening and they're not from Manchester, or they're not even from Connecticut, these same exact principles can apply to where they live. And this idea of land preservation and conservation. But let's start with specifically the Manchester Land Trust. What is its mission, and what is it currently offer to the citizens of Manchester, or really the citizens of the general area?
Sure. Like I said before, the goal is preserve land. And the reason we're preserving land is for habitat, restoration. We want to save the land for native species of wild, birds, animals, plants, that type of thing. The point of our getting the land is, like I said, to get it in right habitat, and in that end, we're dealing with a lot of invasive species. So we have to maintain it, and that's been a big deal. The
maintaining and managing, which is a whole entire, we could talk about this for a long time, but the trust I think most recently, and I could be just off on the number, but about 570 acres are owned by and more importantly, managed by the Manchester Land Trust. Now, this idea of land management, to a lot of people, that's a foreign concept. They don't really understand that land has this need to be managed. Now, much of that stems from human activity to begin with, right? Like you mentioned, invasive species. We as humans have spread a number of invasive species around the world, both accidentally and on purpose, and for a number of different reasons. But the managing of land is fascinating because there's so many aspects in which and so many goals that you're working toward. You'd mentioned habitat for wildlife, right? Native species, biodiversity, sequestering carbon from the atmosphere, right? Keeping land undeveloped for
water quality,
your background. And you can't ignore this. A huge part of it is for people to get out and enjoy natural spaces and the preservation of open space, that experience, which is it's intangible, but it's so vital to who we are as people. What you talk, Susan, a lot about the crown jewel of the trust, and there's a property which is amazing, but talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, our 177.5 acre Bush Hill property, which is kind of on the way to MCC in Manchester. Some of it's in Glastonbury, and it was a tough job to get that land, to get all that land together. We did a lot of fundraising, door-to-door campaigning, getting grants from the state of Connecticut and other grants as well. And this is one of our little thank yous where we got some kids together and put up little signs thanking people for the different grants, like SBM Charitable Foundation or.
Well, this works into already a bigger question. So funding in general. So the trust is a nonprofit organization, right? And it is funded just through donations and like you mentioned, maybe grants from be it the state government, federal government. What does a working budget look like for a land trust, and what does funding look like? What does fundraising look like on a day-to-day basis? And what is membership like?
It's a variety of things. Membership is a big thing that supports us. We have right now 375 active members
375 active members
and 191 lifetime members.
Okay.
And there's a different rate of, different type of membership rates that you pay. The big thing about the Bush Hill she's talking about, though, is that there's a lot of people that come, even as far as from Canada. We have a steward that kind of monitors different people, and there have been visitors as far as Canada, and it's just amazing to see that it's very advertised. We have it very much in the public view, so that everyone knows about that. Again, about the trust, we are a 501c nonprofit corporation. 501c3 nonprofit corporation. And that kind of entices people for donations that they can take a tax deduction.
Right.
Right. So that's good. As far as the grants, we have a main one that helped with this Bush Hill Preserve was the DEP OSWA grant, the Open Space Watershed Act grant. And we did that twice. The first time was in...
Yeah, sorry to cut you off, but the state government, the federal government will subsidize the preservation of land for a number of purposes, right? Environmental advantages, open space, like we just mentioned a moment ago, literally just recreation, wildlife habitat, all of these things. And they do it through different avenues as well. A land trust might be one reason, but talk a term that people hear a lot. Talk about what, just give us a quick definition of a conservation easement, of what that is.
Yeah, we don't do a lot of conservation easements. No. We prefer to own the land outright.
Okay.
So
how would a property typically be transferred from private ownership into ownership from being owned by the land trust? Is it more often that those properties are donated outright, or are those properties purchased by a willing seller at market value?
Most of the time it's purchased. But we have quite a few donated properties. Like ECHN, the hospital, had a 19-acre property that was close to our Cheney Rail Trail. We have a 1 mile portion of the Cheney Rail Trail. The town of Manchester
sort of bisects this town and offers
it's going to be a whole loop eventually.
Yep.
So there's that 19 acre parcel ECHN donated to us. So that was a real nice thing.
And a lot of Risley was donated to us.
Right. Which is that's a sizable tract of land.
155 acres out there.
Now,
straddling Vernon and Bolton.
Yeah. And we should also touch on this quick. I shouldn't speak for it. I guess I'll ask. All land trust land is open to passive recreation as a general definition, meaning you are allowed to hike and bird watch and basically not to partake in any sort of I don't know what you'd say, like the harvesting of natural resources.
What you bring in, you take out type of thing.
Leave no trace ethic. Okay.
We have our Story Trail. So that's very popular.
Yeah. So this is one of your programs that you run, correct?
Yeah.
Talk about that, please.
Well, it's got kiosks, and it has a number on each kiosk, and you should just see the kids come out following 1, 2, 3, and they'll run from kiosk to kiosk, and it'll be a story, about 4 different books a year. It gets changed out.
Yep.
And we do a program with like a librarian or me or somebody will walk the kids through, but most of the time it's just they show up, families show up and enjoy it on their own. It's about a half a mile
Yeah.
walk, and it's fairly open to, you wouldn't feel if you do have some fear of going out, in the woods. This is kind of an open place, and we have regular hikes as well. Throughout the year, the railroad is very popular. Risley is popular. Bush Hill, where we have some American chestnut plantations. These experimental 100 types of trees, 100 trees. They're trying to figure out how genetically to restore the American chestnut. So there's lots of activities that go on. Bird watching is when you have some expert come. Is also very popular.
Yeah, anytime you can draw people out through not only just the enjoyment of recreation, but to incorporate an expert and their knowledge of a landscape. I mean, I think people are. I was talking with Amy Hernandez from Latino Outdoors, and she mentioned how she kept kind of saying how bird watching becomes popular as you get older, and that's. Which is not a trend I disagree with by any means, but Susan, you're specifically sitting here really you're constantly referencing the young people that come out, right? And families that come out. How are you, both as an individual and as the trust, how are you trying to reach out to the next generation of conservationists and next generation of members to help continue to fund the mission and work toward the mission and the goals of the trust?
Well, we have to thank you, Max, for the activities. These 2 Urban Lodge activities really brought in younger people. Our folks tend to be a little bit older. We were founded in 1972. They got started in the late 60s. A lot of doctors who felt you got to have clean air, clean water, et cetera. And so now younger people to come in and become voters who are for conservation. We do walks for Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. We also have a lot of Eagle Scout projects. They'll come and build some bridges or put up some benches.
I want to say I have a friend, a former kid I worked with actually, whose Eagle Scout project was on land trust land.
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing with what she just said. The events that you guys put on for us was very special. I mean,
thank you. We're very, very happy to do it.
And I think we cleared $8,000. It was beautiful.
It was wonderful.
For the 2 events.
Good.
And you let us have a booth that we could kind of talk about the land trust. And these were probably in their 20s, 30s, 40s for age group, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and I think that's. I'm 29, so. A lot of it is me sort of grabbing my friends by the ear and pulling them in and saying, just like, you should support this. It's a good thing and it's very valuable.
Along those lines,
I got a
sorry,
comment
one
here,
second.
Max. Why don't you let your listeners know what Dermot is referring?
I know. I was just about to.
Be very specific and ask people that they should come out. When you have these events, keep an eye out for them and look for them. Go ahead and talk about it.
Well, first of all, thank you for bringing that up. What Dermot's referring to is we've now hosted an annual, and we'll do it again this year, what we just call Beers and Barbecue. It's a very casual fundraising event for the Manchester Land Trust. It's beer and food and good people, and there's nothing wrong with that ever. We usually do live music and some raffles. It's a very fun event that I hope that we continue to not only host every year, but continue to grow larger and larger and really make a more impactful donation every year. And I do want to say too, the Urban Lodge or really Open Trail or whatever it is that's making the donation, quote unquote, really it's just a mechanism that brings people together. It's the community that's making the donation, right? And we're just bringing people together and showing them the value of what your work is, right? So what the value of having open space in our beloved hometown, that how important that is, and that it does not happen by accident. It happens because of individuals such as yourself who work very hard to keep it that way and to expand the land ownership of the trust. I referenced this recently, but 8.2% of Manchester, the land area, 8.2% is undeveloped. I think that if you stand by and not do anything, that 8.2% will get gobbled up by people seeking profit very quickly. It's just a matter of fact. So the work of the trust is vital.
In fact, that 177 acre property, the 62 acres that was the Body Farm and the rest 102 acres that was the Lombardo tract were both slated for development.
Right. Talk
And
about
they-
that, because there was a seriously large development, 120 homes or something.
Yes, yeah, very large. And they had approval for the building project through the town. They had a contractor. Lombardo also, the property had been for sale for quite a while. And then the economy tanked. And so they're still paying taxes.
Right.
And we made some offers and, a little conversation. They wouldn't have sold it to us if it hadn't been for the downturn in the economy. The contractors backed out. They couldn't afford to invest that kind of capital at that time. So then we move in, and with the state grants, of course, those mostly matching grants.
Right.
So if you get 500,000, you've got to come up with 500,000. But that would have changed the character of the town.
Oh, absolutely.
To have hundreds of houses, and one of them was going to have like a nursing home and an assisted living, and
Which, by the way, I mean, we should take a moment to point out, people do need places to live.
Yes.
People do need nursing homes,
Yes.
and people need assisted living. We're not,
no, and we're not against that.
we're not against living in homes. I personally live in a home. We're just also in support of maintaining some open space and some conserved land for this very specific place. I also wanted to ask you about.
Well, I was going to mention about enticing younger people to
Oh, please.
volunteer. I wanted to get onto that. We have a property, Buckland Pond, and we collaborated with Manchester Community College students in 1999 for their project. They did a survey of the pond, seeing how good it was. Was it eutrophic or was it gone, right? And it turned out it was pretty good condition at the time. And so that's another way we're trying to get members, volunteers and members to join. And then from that, I think we're going to collaborate again with, community college or UConn and try to do that, because that's where the young people are.
Oh yeah,
And that's where we've got to go out and reach them.
and it's worth it too to be there to just at least plant the seed. Maybe you're not going to necessarily make a member out of a 19-year-old kid in community college, and that's okay. But now they know what a trust does. They know what the land trust does, and they know what properties they can access. And through having those experiences, they'll work through their own personal journey of becoming somebody who cares about land preservation and conservation. On the topics of the trust and sort of how it operates, when we talk about this, roughly 570 acres, what we're talking about is land that is going to be held in perpetuity and never developed. How's that possible? I mean, how is it written, and what guarantees that that's the case?
Well, some of those grants, you have to say this will remain open space. If you attempted to build on it, you'd be in trouble with the state of Connecticut, and they could make you take down those buildings.
Oh yeah.
So it's not just us and our mission and our bylaws and for our 501c3 status. It's the state of Connecticut as well.
Which it speaks to kind of the broader, if anyone is listening or watching this from somewhere outside of Manchester, the land trusts exist all around the country.
Hundreds and hundreds.
And there are guiding, kind of like the Connecticut Land Conservation Council, right? They're sort of a guiding organization for land trusts that allow or assist them in their projects.
Yes.
Am I on the
Yes.
right track with that?
And then we're also, we've been recently collaborating with other land trusts. There's the Joshua Trust, the North, I forget the name.
Central.
That manages an enormous amount of land.
Right, and then the Bolton Trust. So we've been kind of meeting together. It started a few years ago, and we're going to start it back up again. But we need to collaborate as we can't just isolate our own selves and hope that the volunteers we get are going to be good enough. If we can get work from the other trusts, that's great.
Yeah.
And it's great. With the Bush Hill Preserve, for instance, we have a good core group, about 10, 12 volunteers, and they're maintaining that property pretty well. And then at Risley, we have about 2 or 3, volunteers that, and a steward that deals with Risley Reservoir. The other properties, it would go hit and miss, but we're trying to get, each one have a steward, but it's tough to do.
Well, I want to get back to that too, and talk about sort of again how your land is managed in a way. But first, let me just take a break so we can say thank you to our sponsors.
The Open Trail podcast is sponsored by Urban Lodge Brewing Company, creators of amazing handcrafted beer, food, good times, and great memories, with locations in Manchester and on Pratt Street in downtown Hartford, Connecticut. And Quas Media, located in Manchester, Connecticut and Nashville, Tennessee. Quas Media is an award-winning digital marketing firm producing video, digital signage systems, and interactive digital experiences.
Hey, this is Max, host of the Open Trail podcast. If you're enjoying today's conversation, then join the conversation every week. There are full episodes available on the Open Trail Podcast YouTube channel, so be sure to subscribe. On top of that, follow us on social media at Open Trail Podcast. Most importantly, I want you to get outside and get after it with the people that you love and to build your relationship with the natural world. So we're here with Susan Barlow and Dermot Jones with the Manchester Land Conservation Trust. Susan, can I ask you about a type of recreation that you're familiar with? I think it's called sunbathing. Forest bathing.
Forest bathing.
Most people know what sunbathing is.
Shinrin Yaku.
Yeah.
Came from Japan, and it's considered a therapeutic way to get outdoors. Not to be super active. It's not cardio. It's more a mindful meditation, a meditative walk with a leader who has taken some training in the topic and might focus on trees or might focus on this. Our next one is going to be in February, so it won't be wildflowers. Maybe it'll be snow.
Yeah.
But just a way of slowing down. It's very therapeutic. You could probably do it on your own, but doing it in community, as I was saying with our walks that we do, it's more of a community activity.
Yeah.
So we've got that. And I do want to mention, too, about support. We have wonderful support from the town of Manchester.
Without a doubt,
They have given us some very big grants for the Bush Hill area and the Lombardo, and help us with, like when we had some of those big storms and the trees fall on the trail. We can cut them up. Our volunteers can do that, but it's a matter of disposing of. And they've been very helpful.
Part of the cost of managing large pieces of land. It's not inexpensive, especially if you're going to do it in a way in which you're, working toward a goal of fighting off invasive species or working toward promoting the growth of non-natives or improving wildlife habitat.
So I'd like to talk about that too. The ECHN property I mentioned.
Yes.
Not only was it full of tires and other debris that we pulled out, and the town helped us take it. We just put it there, and they came with trucks and got it away for no cost. It was beautiful.
That's great.
We're also working with the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station to help remove the winged euonymus there. It's one thing about that, and things like knotweed, Japanese knotweed. They were selling it at nurseries and everything and putting it out there. But it has a beautiful thing. In the fall, it goes red.
People have done a lot of silly things.
Oh, my God.
They didn't know.
In the past.
In their defense, they didn't know.
Yeah.
So this agricultural experiment station person wanted to do research on how to best remove the winged euonymus. And he's in there doing that to this day. He's cutting up and painting it with a herbicide so it gets killed. And so we can use that research so that when we need to go in, we can say, okay, this is the best product we can use. We have to use herbicides for getting rid of a lot of these plants like mugwort and, Japanese
and
knotweed.
to touch on it too, it's often that invasive species that become issues are because they are so deleterious and fast growing, fast spreading, and these issues. My own yard, I bought this very small property in town, but the euonymus just everywhere, crazy. And so in analyzing your own property, you should look at what is native, what should be here, what shouldn't be here, and try and look toward a conscious effort of what you could do to even just on a micro scale manage what you have right literally in your backyard.
So that's what we're trying to emphasize more on walks, as Susan has mentioned to me too, that, we want to get the people that come on the hikes to be aware of what these plants look like. So they have it in their backyards like abutting neighbors. If we clean up the Bush Hill Preserve and the abutting neighbors still have the invasives that we just got rid of, they're going to come back. And then there's also now animal species that we're dealing with, like, for instance, the spotted lanternfly. And I guess you saw in the paper about the Asian jumping worms, earthworms. Those are another, they're here in Connecticut, and they really wreck topsoil. And so, then trees fall more.
Yeah, and you have, this can be, it's really heartbreaking in some ways. The emerald ash borer, for example, or Dutch elm disease, right? These are
The chestnut
disease. Chestnut blight. I've heard recently that the Appalachian Mountain Range could very likely not have chestnut trees in 50 years.
It's possible.
That the species as a whole that once dominated this entire deciduous forest may no longer be. It's unbelievable. But yeah, it starts with, instead of approaching it with this got to save the world tomorrow attitude, really it's just, what can you do in your own backyard? What can you do in your town? How do you become a member of your local land trust and support their work? And that's why we're here today.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Which I guess is a good time to ask, how does one become a member? What's the cost, and how do they go about doing that?
Well, our land trust website, manchesterlandtrust.org, you can join through the website with PayPal and a credit card. Or all our hikes, we hand out little things that they QR code or whatever that they could join. When you join a land trust, you're supporting beyond just this particular property. You're supporting community efforts, and you don't have to go to meetings. You don't have to volunteer. You could just pay your $25 a year, and
that's what it is, $25 a year,
or $50 for a family, right?
Yeah. You could become a life member for $500. You're a life member.
I'm a life member.
You're a life member.
I think we should stress that, and wherever this conversation gets put online, I'll be sure that we have a direct link to the trust page where people can sign up. And if you are listening to this and you're a young person, you don't have to be a young person, but especially if you're a young person, sign up for your local land trust and become a member. Like they just mentioned, $25 a year. I think you can spare it for the very simple understanding that you could have it at some point in time live in a town with no open space and no forest land or meadows or grasslands or anything. So it's so important. I want to say thank you both for the work that you're doing. Thank you for being here today too, and having this.
Having us.
Oh, of course, for having this conversation. I hope to have you back, or we can actually talk with a couple other members, because you have a very active board and a number of trustees. So I just want to say thank you, and we appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.